Good morning and welcome to the Digital Supply Chain webinar. I'd like to commence by acknowledging and paying our respects to the people of the Gold Coast, all their descendants past and present. We also like to acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions as well as the Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in our local area and have made important and continue to make important contributions to our community. My name is Estella Rodighiero. I'm the Director of Regional Development for Regional Development Australia, RDA Gold Coast. I'm also the Chair of the Gold Coast Regional Jobs Committee. In 2020, we commissioned the Gold Coast Industry 4.0 Business and Investment Project. We did this in partnership with the Queensland Government, the City of Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct. This project examined the future Industry 4.0 capability enablers, the potential clusters, the supply chain connections, and the skills requirements on the Gold Coast. And the study found that there was significant Industry 4.0 capability across the Gold Coast, especially in advanced and additive manufacturing, health and medical technology, space and aerospace, textiles, food technology, sport and film sectors. This project also highlighted that COVID had fast-tracked the adoption of advanced technology and the need for a workforce with skill sets aligned to Industry 4.0. COVID has also led to increased expectation of sovereign capability and supply chain independence for future resilience. The importance of industry moving from traditional linear supply chain to an integrated digital supply chain mix was a key project finding. Many manufacturers tend to rely heavily on internal capabilities and resources to create and sustain competitive advantages. Such resources, particularly in small to medium businesses, are limited and not synchronised with their extended supply chain activities. So to this end, this webinar will explore digital supply chains, how to take the first steps in its adoption, and to do that, we're also including some expert speakers and a case study from Mexx Engineering who have integrated digitisation into their supply chain successfully. You will gain practical insights into how to integrate digital supply chain technologies, where to start, and the benefits you can derive. There is a poll at the beginning, and this poll will also be ran at the end of this webinar. During the panel sessions, there's also an opportunity to ask questions, and if we're unable to address those during the session, we will endeavour to do so following the webinar. So, our first poll. You'll see a QR code and you can open that QR code. And this is a simple question. It's, what is your current understanding of the digital supply chain at this time on a scale of 1 to 5? So if you could take a couple of minutes and just address that poll. Thank you. Now let's get on with the webinar. First up, I'd like to introduce Shay Chalmers. Shay is the Director of Queensland Manufacturing Institute and Owner-Director of Strategic Engineering Australia. Shay is one of Australia's most renowned manufacturing industry experts, engineering consultants, and she's a keynote speaker with cross-sector and global experience, spanning a wide range of manufacturing environments from steel to medical devices. Shay provides consulting expertise across a wide range of manufacturing applications, and she sits on numerous boards, not-for-profit and the government sector, and she's also on the board of RDA Gold Coast. And Shay will be speaking today to you on the digital supply chain evolution. Good morning, Shay.
Good morning. Thanks, Estella. Firstly, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we are all gathered on today. For me, here in Brisbane, also known as Meanjin, is the home of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples. I strongly believe it's important to acknowledge Australia's first innovators, teachers, leaders, and their special ongoing connection to land, water, and culture. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. As Estella mentioned, my name is Shay Chalmers, and I work with people from industry, government, and education to harness ideas and create opportunities for the Australian manufacturing industry. Before we begin, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to the Queensland Manufacturing Institute that I'm one of the directors of. It's an important part of my work as we believe we have a social responsibility to support our manufacturing community to prosper through the work that we do every day. Since 1993, QMI has been supporting the Queensland manufacturing community. We're an independent, for-purpose, not-for-profit organisation who was originally founded by the Queensland Government, TAFE, CSIRO and QUT. We deliver programs and services that support, develop and grow Queensland's manufacturing companies and the ecosystems. Today, our focus is to bring contemporary experience of manufacturing business leaders to maximise our impact across industry. Manufacturing in Queensland is embarking on a journey to transition to the global environment of Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. Our industry has an extremely positive outlook, and its diversity contributes significantly to the strength of the Queensland economy. As Estella touched on, manufacturing in Queensland is diverse, and it touches almost every value chain. It covers ag, food, rail, defence, biomed, biotech, heavy vehicles, textiles and clothing, marine, mining equipment, just to name a few. Queensland manufacturing consistently contributes about $20 billion per year to our economy, and our manufacturers export products totaling almost $16 billion every year. The fourth industrial revolution sees our industry going digital. This digital revolution is characterized by a fusion of technologies that's blurring the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. In Australia, we've been pretty slow in the uptake of our 4.0 technologies for a number of reasons. Lack of strategic business alignment, lack of knowledge and data, and a culture of preservation have been identified as some of the key reasons that manufacturers have struggled with the uptake. But COVID has certainly pushed us forward in a lot of ways in our digital transformation. Manufacturing has been in the midst of this transformation for a number of years, and the rapid pace of technological change and digitization has thrust a number of these changes on our industry. The pace of change has really been compounded by the pandemic. I've witnessed businesses across the nation transform and pivot to meet the changing needs of our community and their rapidly evolving supply chains. This race for survival has sparked huge amounts of innovation. Manufacturers have taken risks with new markets, new products, and new supply chains. What concerns me, though, is that this rapid and dramatic change has not been paired with the additional investment looking more deeply at our business and operational strategies. Business model innovation and strategic workforce planning are two core elements that are crucial to our ongoing success. All of these changes has created a tipping point for a long overdue conversation about new business models in advanced manufacturing and their associated digital supply chains. A new digital business model conversation is urgently needed right now. Less innovative companies will be left behind. The businesses that will be best positioned to adapt quickly to disruption are those that can digitally link their raw material procurement to their design and operations, all the way to the manufacturing floor and beyond to create a seamless customer experience. The days of the large monolithic factory churning out standardized products and shipping them all around the world is increasingly at odds with the global drive towards environmental sustainability, customization, shorter lead times, and greater scrutiny on the provenance of our products. New technologies mean we can now envisage different ways of doing things. Distributed manufacturing using new production processes could mean that our goods are produced closer to the customer in smaller factories with shorter supply chains, delivering more personalized products and services with a lower cost to the environment. This strongly aligns with the strength of Australian manufacturing. The state of manufacturing has changed, and we need to change with it. The update of technology and I 4.0 technologies forms an enabler for the digitalization of supply chains. This digitalization has been critical to allowing early switching of capacity and resources. Manufacturers whose demand and supply systems have been designed for responsiveness and flexibility will have an edge from those that are constrained by rigid, centralized manual operations. For businesses that are thinking about their own digital supply chain strategies, one of the key challenges is to move beyond what the technologies are, like the Industry 4.0 shopping list, and think about what they can do. What are the benefits that they bring to the business, and how do they align with our business strategy? In a typical supply chain, the flow of goods involves designing a product, sourcing and procuring raw materials and parts, making the product, estimating demand, planning how you'll market the final product, taking orders, logistics, sales channels, and then providing customers with visibility into their orders. This is a plan and react approach. Items tend to travel linearly, with each step dependent on the previous one. The linear pre-digital approach to supply chains is dependent on each step in the process performing exactly as expected. A failure to perform by a sub-assembly provider or a shipper along the supply chain may not be discoverable for days or weeks. The result is often missed production deadlines or unhappy customers, or a mad rush to find a secondary supplier who can get the widget to you ASAP without disrupting too much of your production plans and your delivery dates. This has been made extremely evident with global supply chains broken due to the pandemic and geopolitical challenges. A digital supply chain, on the other hand, provides significantly more visibility into the workings of the supply chain. It is a set of processes that use advanced technologies to provide better insights into the functions of each stakeholder along the chain. With near real-time visibility of supplier performance and customer needs, lets the supply chain owners develop more complex relationships with more suppliers, hence reducing the risk against many of the sources of disruption. Digital supply chains are more customer-centric and aim to meet today's expectations of our customers, which is speed, personalization, and choice. What this means in practice really depends on what your business is trying to achieve, but ultimately the fundamental concept is that a digital supply chain integrates internal systems and data with external information. There's two-way sharing with suppliers and full visibility into the supply chain for all stakeholders. New technologies collect, monitor, and analyze the data to make predictions and recommend actions in real time. Fully integrating our legacy supply chain management technologies like demand planning, asset management, warehouse management, procurement, order fulfillment is the first needed step. But truly digitizing a supply chain also involves mining data from those processes and implementing the right equipment that enables us to produce the needed data. Where traditional supply chains plan and react, digital supply chains predict and prescribe the actions that we need to take. There are a number of benefits to digital supply chains, and you can see them outlined on the slide here. I guess some of the challenges that we have, though, is we might just move on to the next slide. Thank you. Manufacturing is actually the most targeted industry for cyber attacks. Cyber criminals and hackers are always looking for the easiest route into an organization's systems and data. The shortest way is often not through the front door, but through the weaker links that make up a digitally enabled supply chain. Organizations that understand and manage the breadth of their interconnected supply chain and their potential points of vulnerability and weaknesses are better placed to prevent and manage these issues. Some of these issues can occur because with a digitally enabled supply chain, trust is regularly handed over to third-party providers, and sometimes that happens without proper due diligence, risk assessments, or the examinations of the controls required. Also, we often have machinery and equipment which is reliant on old legacy technology, which can be really difficult to secure, and that's a challenge that many of our manufacturers face. Cyber attack, ethical breaches, and non-compliance are just some of the risks that organizations could be exposed to as they grow supply networks across the globe and increasingly share sensitive information via technology. It's something that we need to deeply consider and manage the risks as we head down this path. Now that I've said all that, it certainly feels like there's a bit of an overwhelming digital opportunity and significant risks to overcome. But the most important question for businesses is, how do we decide where to start? The team at Cambridge, led by Jagjit Sarai, have been researching the design of manufacturing supply networks and how we can bring together different layers into a single framework that drive effective decision-making in what is a hugely complex ecosystem. To help businesses think about their digital options, they've developed a series of scenarios across the supply chain which show firms what could be done. These range from automated e-sourcing of parts to digitally enabled production processes like 3D printing, through to smart factory design and automation, to direct to the consumer e-commerce with real-time monitoring. If you're interested in starting on this digital journey, I highly recommend you read into the detail of these elements on this slide and the case studies that the Cambridge team has performed. According to Sarai, the areas firms identified as offering the biggest potential for benefit were flexible factory automation, digital product quality, and real-time scheduling. However, these were also the areas that were perceived by companies to be some of the riskiest to implement. Digital supply chain transformation projects are not about doing everything at once. Organizations need to consider the scale of the opportunity across the supply chain and the risks involved, then prioritize those technology interventions that impact most on supply chain operations and deliver outcomes that best support the greater business strategy. During the work at Cambridge, they surveyed a number of businesses to understand the key barriers with regards to digital supply chains. It's pretty interesting insight because we've come a long way in the last decade, and now availability and access to the right technology is not the overriding problem. What's more of a challenge is the skills gap, which was identified as common across all parts of business. This chart shows that skill gaps were perceived to be consistently higher than technology gaps. And this is not an easy problem for an individual business to fix. It implies the need for a complete overhaul of the way digital skills are taught throughout our education system, as well as cultural change throughout organizations from the director level down. It doesn't matter which element of business optimization we look at, attracting the right skills to support it is critical. Creating the optimal organizational culture for attraction and retention of staff should be a strategic imperative. So what next? Well, I feel like I'm saying this a lot lately, but embrace VUCA as the new normal. Things are volatile, things are uncertain. And it just feels like we've got one challenge thrown at us after another, but we're lucky we're a resilient bunch. I guess if we look at some next steps, there's a few that you can start looking at. What does a manufacturing digital transformation look like for your business? How does that align to your strategy? Look holistically at your factory and think about what it means to transform to be a smart factory. Like any change, it's a cultural transition, and we need to make digital transformation a company-wide goal. It's the same as when you're implementing a quality system. Everybody needs to be involved. It's the same as when you're implementing lean manufacturing techniques. Digital transformation needs to be a cultural change across the entire organization. Look forward. Think about what it actually means to have a predictive business model. Think creatively, do scenario planning, and create an understanding of the what if scenarios to anticipate disruption and determine the best course of action in advance. If we can think about all the potential wildcards that we're getting thrown and think about what happens within your supply chain, if this happens, then what, and start scenario planning for that disruption, it's a really good way to plan for the future. So with that, I might come to a close and hand back to Estella, but thank you so much for listening today, and I hope some of those insights will be helpful on your digital transformation.
Thank you, Shay, very much. Shay will be joining us a little bit later on a panel session. So if you have any questions for Shay, please write them in now, and we'll make sure she gets to respond to a couple of your queries. Thank you. Our next presenter is Simon Dawson. Simon's the Director, Industrial Transformation, the Innovative Manufacturing Cooperative Research Centre. Simon's joining us from Melbourne, and he holds a manufacturing engineering degree and an MBA, as well as being a chartered engineer and lean management expert. He is an experienced manufacturing operations executive who has worked across several different sectors, including the fast-moving consumer goods, automotive, rail and medical devices. And as Director of the Innovative Manufacturing Cooperative Research Centre Industrial Transformation Program, he works predominantly with manufacturing SMEs, helping them to understand and embrace the concept of Industry 4.0. Simon will be speaking on understanding the technology and the digital models of supply chains. Thank you and welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much, Estella. It's a really nice intro. Firstly, as with the others, I'd like to pay my respects. I'm down here in Melbourne. I'd like to pay my respects to the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation from my part of the world, down here on the beautiful Mornington Peninsula, and obviously pay my respect to the elders past, present, and those emerging. And I agree with Shay's comments. And as a POM myself, I feel it's very important. I love the way that the Australian nation does embrace and support and promote these messages for the Indigenous communities, and very pleased to do the same myself. So I, as you said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of some of the digital supply chain conversations and some of the work we've done from the IMCRC. So we'll just jump to the next slide. And again, sorry. So I work for the Innovative Manufacturing CRC. Those who haven't come across the CRC models, the CRC sits in between, is a co-funded model, helping industry and the research sectors work together and come together. We have, as a team, delivered over 70 projects, each with starting off with about 35 million of government money, plus the same, bringing that in from industry. And when you add in kind and additional support, over sort of $230 million worth of energy has gone into the manufacturing sector on innovative. And we're very proud of that. As a CRC, you have a life. We actually conclude during this year. But again, overall, very proud of what we've done across a range of sectors. And as you'll see as I go through this presentation, that's given us some really interesting insights into what people are doing and perhaps what people can do. So next slide. One of the things we do on the side of the project, and my responsibility, is a tool called FutureMap. Some of you may have come across it, but importantly, for the sake of today, it's worth just thinking about this as a way that one of the ways we think about Industry 4 is we try and avoid getting too drawn on just the what, just what the tech can be, which is very easy, very tempting. But in reality, it's important that people think about, and these are the 4 dimensions we talk about, the market question first. What is it for you? what is the competitive advantage? How is this Industry 4 or tech going to take you forward? How is it going to strengthen your strategic position? Is it going to give you an additional strategic lock-in, new ability for export? So market as the first dynamic. Secondly, we cannot, and I think Shay talked about the VUCA concept, we cannot ignore the fact that if you're in a VUCA world and dealing with technologies that you don't have 40 years experience of, and you don't have an embedded capability, leadership is different. Leadership is different in this world. So digital supply chain world, as we move forward, what does that mean for leadership behavior and reflecting on your style as a team? What does it mean for things like short-term incentives that potentially lock in doing next year the same as last year? So how does all that work? So leadership is the second dimension we focus on. Innovation, what is the innovation style in the organization? How do you create innovation? And lastly, digital application, what actually is happening in your business? And we run around all those 4 dimensions. So just click to the next slide. What that means is that we've, next slide, please, yeah. So I wasn't quite as organized as Shay. I have to do my prompts. So after 750 manufacturers have done that, right? So we've been through this process with about 1,200 companies, 750 of which we would count as manufacturing SMEs. There's lots of other supporting organizations in there as well, but I focus on the manufacturing team in there. And I think we learned some really key lessons on building momentum. What is it that drives momentum in this? So we heard from Shay about the possibility, about what's there and how important it is for us to start engaging with this subject. But I see a lot of inertia. I see a lot of organizations that I speak to saying, I get it, but I'm not quite sure, I'm not quite sure how to play this. So I want to talk about 3 areas that I think are helpful when it comes to building your own momentum. How do you build your momentum in this space? How do you start moving forward, or how do you keep moving forward? And those are, I want to talk about the importance of understanding possibility. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tech and sort of the continuum of each of those, because in each piece of tech, I think it's important to understand what the best in class might be, but also think about what the first step version of that might be. Where might you start? I'm going to touch then briefly on the changing role of strategy, and I promote this principle because it's something I've really learned from listening to SMEs. The way in which we think about strategy may need to change a little bit, and that kind of, I think getting that right and thinking about that might take some breaks off for some organizations. And lastly, the need to act, the criticality of doing something, I think in this space, which again, in a VUCA world, it's very easy to get bamboozled, frankly, by the level of change. But against that context, we still need to act, we still need to move forward. Okay, so let's move on to the importance of possibility. There are, I think for the purpose of today, I'm going to focus on these 4 of the generally worded enabling technologies. So sensors and data analytics, very much connected to the supply chain. How might that be used for predictive maintenance, logistics tracking, risk signaling, etc. Smart robotics and automation. What is the role of collaborative robotics and automation for organization? How that might link into things like AI, obviously, as we move forward and become more complex and more advanced in that space. Additive, which I think is a really interesting journey for many. The simple end of that, I happen to be sat next to my 2 printers that sit on my desk. So we do have that sort of really, really clear starting point for additive, but some really creative stuff happening potentially downstream. And lastly, augmented and virtual reality. And if I get on my soapbox about how exciting that could be to manufacturing, we might be here all day. So I'll try and rein myself in, but I genuinely see at some point, we'll see some really significant changes in augmented reality. So let me just touch on each of those first. So if we can just move on to sensors and data analytics. And I'm going to do this just by referring to a couple of projects that we have on the go at the CRC. And for me, I think it's interesting to talk about what's the starting point for these versus where might you be. So starting points for sensors and data analytics, some of you may have come across the principle called factory in a box, which is really saying, I want to have some analytics of my facility. I don't quite yet know what it is. The concept of factory in a box is within a really short period, we can set a few sensors up, get some data and start on that journey of gathering that data. I think that idea of going from spreadsheets and charts to some really early adoption of analytics within my facility, perhaps, or perhaps downstream, perhaps a simple IoT device on one dimension of what I do is a really helpful starting point, and a way for organizations to start to test whether this is, how important this might be for them. And that's my theme, I guess, as I go through each of these four, is these starting steps help you to think about how helpful this might be, but downstream there could be lots of creative ideas. On sensors and analytics, I think I want to talk about these two on the right now. So the top one is a company called Motor One Group. They make various car cleaning and shampoos and pet shampoos and things like this. So complex facility. They're just moving to a new facility. They've got a great range of products, but a really complex bill of material structure. So they need their data on dosing levels relative to recipe, and then creating traceability behind the back of that has been a complex manual task. So moving that into a sensor world, sensors on each dosing piece of kit, really obvious dimension, really great thing for them to be trying to do. And it's kind of the typical standard story of what we might see with data analytics. But we've also got the project below, which is Verton. Verton up in Queensland, this has been largely run out of the Arm Hub and QUT. A project where if I've got a complex movement of a component on a crane, on a jib, I can use data within the unit. I can use gyroscopes, etc., to understand the movement, the sway, the impact of the wind, what's actually going on up there, to use that to reset, balance, and try and dampen down any movement. So it's more, it is an analytics problem, and it is a sensors problem, but it moves you into a slightly different space. It's taking advantage of it in a different way. And I think for me, this is really critical. We have a capability in sense analytics is a strengthening ability to gather information, but how do I want to use it? Do I want to use it to improve quality and traceability, or do I want to use it to have a product that nobody else can do? And so if we move on to the next one, talk briefly about robotics. And again, I'll be quicker on this one because I think we all get what the basic point could be here. A simple example of should we have a cobot that's on a trolley, I wheel it somewhere, I datum it up, it does a job, I wheel it somewhere else, datum it up, and it does another job. Single use or multiple use applications within a facility, I think we all get. But again, if I'm thinking about the art of the possible here, these two projects we're involved with, the top one is Halo, is a UTS project. This is a robot that basically is going to do rock scaling in the mining sector. So trying to basically establish a robot that can go down a rock face and dislodge the rocks that might fall on your head, which is currently a reasonably risky and expensive operation. And the second one there, again, it just shows how broad when we talk about these subjects, robotics and automation can be. A project we have called Dentroid, which, and this one freaks people out a little bit. The idea that you could potentially have a little box that clamps over your teeth, which within it has various lasers that are automatically controlled. So the dentist doesn't actually need to go in your mouth. That little gadget does it for you. Again, I get that one is not overly comfortable for everybody. But again, I use these to demonstrate when we talk about robotics and automation, don't just assume I mean put a cobot in your facility. It could be that robotics and automation changes your product, changes your potential, and is something completely revolutionary in the market. Next one. Additive is the same. Additive is I love it, right? So I think many of us can see the capability of additive in a complex environment being jigs and fixturing, repairs, localized repair, just in disaster, I think they call it, the idea of having additive printing on naval vessels instead of spare parts, for example. And so for many of us, we can find those early steps of, well, why don't we think of a way of rapid prototyping? I think most people have kind of gone down that journey. But what it can take you, and I'll talk about the bottom one, and there's several of these examples. That is the connecting unit that you need if you have to have some kind of a colostomy bag or some kind of any of those sort of bags, and you need an interface to you that frankly doesn't leak, right, and is reliable and consistent. So moving from a world where you might have 3 sizes of that to a world where you are scanned A piece of AI data then works around the back, does the design, converts that into a producible product, and then additively produces that. Is a significant step forward in the capability and the performance for you. But again, it's a great use of additive manufacturing to mass customize, and there's plenty of those. If you get the opportunity, look up FuseTech, FuseTech, down in South Australia. Use additive to produce orthopedic models to allow surgeons to train without having to use cadavers. It's a phenomenal example of using the technology of additive, not just for rapid prototypes or jigs, fixtures, the basics, to transition a market. And lastly, I'll touch on AR, VR. We can move forward. Like I said, I can talk about this for a while. I have a strong view that at some point, the concepts of mixed reality will change the way we think as manufacturers. The two projects I have showing here include the top one, the ability to have a product that I have remotely installed and to give the person that's installing it remotely a set of glasses, and they can see the real thing, but they can also see my hands sat where I am, and I've got a virtual version in front of me, and I can point and touch, and we can remote train. We're starting to see that become more and more the norm, right? So again, augmented reality and virtual reality will take us down that path. But equally, the ideas of being able to, and the bottom one is we're working with BAE up in Flinders, being able to wear, and these are all wearing sort of the more clunky units, but there is now a Trimble unit, which is a hard hat with a visor. It looks pretty standard, looks pretty normal, but it allows you to bring mixed reality in. So I can stand in front of my workstation. If I want to see the SOP, I grab it in virtual space, I spread it in front of me and read it, put it back. I want to see something else on the standards, or if I want to look at a virtual representation of my workload or the finished product, I can do all that instantly. It's absolutely coming for us. So again, for many of us, I think there are starting points, be that a training opportunity, service support, or simply just connecting up a device so that when I hit a torque correctly on a torque wrench, it gives me a green light. We should all be thinking about that journey, but potentially these are all strategic changes. So I'll just move to the next one. So I want to talk briefly now about the changing role of strategy. So I think possibility, what I wanted to demonstrate there was that the possibilities are kind of endless, but it's not just about within your factory, it can be about downstream. So when I talk about strategy, what I think is important is, like many of you, I'm ex-automotive, I've done plenty of years in manufacturing, and as manufacturers, we tend to get in this world of vision, mission, strategy, goals, action, improve. Let's do it again next year. We can get locked in that. And we go round and round that, but just click to the next slide. I think there's a reality here that VUCA doesn't align to that. If I'm a manufacturer of injection moldings, I can quickly do, in 5 years' time, I want to be in a different sector. I want to go to extrusion as well as injection. I want to go bigger tonnage, lower tonnage. I can plan that, and then I can work backwards. The concept that Shay talked about, as we end up with a much less certain world, we can't be. Strategy needs to be different. Do we know what the environment will be? Do we know how we will compete? Do we know what we're capable of? Which I think is a really good question. If I'm doing a 5-year strategy, how far can I stretch myself given technologically advantage? So on the next slide, I think I've kind of made my point, which is we need to find your strategy by doing. So that last slide, find your strategy by doing, is my summary point there. I think what we need to be doing on all of these things is taking a step and learning from that. And each time you take a step in this sort of digital world, I think it opens doors for you. So rather than necessarily trying to say, I can see what my 5-year position is, maybe work on, I think my solution is going to be something to do with automation. I need to start an automation journey. What that does, it brings the skills and it starts to bring you thinking about how your recruitment would work. So lastly, I just want to touch on the need to act. So jump to the next slide. We have spoken to 750 plus manufacturers, and some of the things that we've seen, I'll just pick on a couple of these. 47% of businesses do not have a technology plan linked to an overall strategic plan. 100% want to improve that, but that's a significant number of people that have not thought about linking technology to strategy. I think Shay made it really clear, technology and the ability of technology will impact on your strategy. It will impact on your competitors' positions. It will impact on what your customers expect. It will also impact on what your employees expect. So to not have a technology plan is a little disappointing, I think. So again, thinking about making sure we do that. 95%, more than 95% want to improve real-time data to their employees. Only 45% want to increase their export, which is interesting. It's suggesting that actually we want to do all this actually more locally than perhaps not. And if bottom left, more than 85% say, yeah, we provide significant benefit, but less than 50% have converted this to strategic lock-in. Now, I'm going to emphasize this one because I believe quite strongly that the biggest thing that Industry 4 offers to manufacturers is strategic lock-in. It creates an opportunity for you to add value or do something in a way that gives you a more of a lock-in with your customers. They're still buying the product, but they're seeing that either the risk aversion that you're doing down your supply chain or the data you're providing digitally, all is giving them more that they're not going to get elsewhere. So I think that concept of digital lock-in is really important. 90% of businesses want to be operating a more effective improvement culture, but only 30% are there at the moment. So again, that tells me that people get it, but we're not quite getting it up the to-do list, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And people are saying that we want to build our digital skill set. So people have about 25% have it now, nearly 90% say they want that in the future. So there's real ambition there, but I think it all comes back to we need to do such. So if we just jump to the next slide. When I look at the aggregate data, and I really just focus on the numbers on the right here, our leaders, we ask people, are you aware of Industry 4? 59% say, yes, we're aware of it. Great. Is our board and owners aware? Yeah, 57%. Great. So there's good positive numbers around awareness. But is it frequently discussed? Is Industry 4 frequently discussed? 23%. I think that's disappointing, right? And I think my message here is try not to be one of the 77%. It tells me that we've got organizations that are aware of the stories, all the stuff that Shay and I have been talking about, awareness. But if you're going to act, if acting and doing is critical, if you're not talking about it, you're not going to do it. And I understand, I get that cash flow, etc. There's lots of other issues that are really important. But it really quite punches you in the face when you see that only 23% acknowledge that they regularly discuss digital strategy. Yeah, it's a surprising number. So I think the next slide kind of talks to why that might be. We asked this question, do our leadership and management understand the advantages arising from Industry 4? And in the darker number is where they are now. 36%. Our leadership and management understand the opportunity for new business models, 29%. So I think, again, that's a critical metric. It tells me that roughly a third of organizations get it in terms of competitive advantage. You may understand what it is, but you haven't isolated your competitive advantage, what it might actually mean to you. So again, I'll give my my act and keep moving forward speech. I think there is a real need for organizations to embrace this breadth of digital possibility. Some great, I mean, Shay's stories were perfect on what could be done, what exists, how this works, what strength this might bring to you in the market, strategic lock-in, or productivity, whatever your dimension is. You need to find that time to work on where do you think, you might not be spot on, again, it's not a 5-year strategy, where do you think your competitive advantage is going to come from all this capability? What's your competitive advantage going to be? Once you've got a sense of that, then you can start acting. Then you can say, well, I think it's going to come from augmented reality. Well, let's go and buy a OcuLens and play with it. Let's go and get let's get an intern in from one of the universities. Let's find a small project. Let's apply it to station 7 of our facility. Let's find out who in our organization is already in this space and is a gamer, for example. I had a great example of a company that wanted to get into additive manufacturing and spent quite a long while thinking about, well, shall we, shan't we? They eventually bought additive some machines, and they did a big unveil to the shop floor, only to discover that 3 of their employees had exactly those machines in their shed. They could have opened that door more quickly by saying, who's already in this space? So lastly, on the next slide, we always kind of close FutureMap with this message. And turning data into information is one thing, but turning it into dollars is where it counts, naturally, right? But these last two, if you apply digital to a broken thing, you will have a digital broken thing. As in my intro, I'm a lean guy. I think there's so much power in what lean can do and value stream maps, etc. If we try and apply digital to a value stream that's suboptimal, there's no point optimizing the wrong part of your value chain. There's no point speeding at X to create different bottlenecks. So if we apply digital to a broken thing, we have a digital broken thing. So I'm sure you'd agree, endorse the idea that we don't let go of all the good stuff we've learned. We don't let go of the good stuff we've learned on continuous improvement and lean and flow as we do this. And lastly, be troubled but excited. And I think this plays to Shay's closing message. This concept of VUCA, the complexity of the world is going to continue. We see, if you look at rate of adoption of technology, the rate of adoption of a standard, an original telephone was like this, a mobile phone was like that, smartphones was like this. Rate of adoption is going to become fast. Things are going to turn up. They're going to change and accelerate. None of that's going to slow down. So we should be a bit troubled about our world's going to change, but we should be excited. You know, I think as manufacturers, what's going to be happening, what we can do, what we can provide the market, what we can sell out there is huge potential. And you know, I'll put my affiliation with the government hat on, and a huge opportunities for us to strengthen what we can do as a nation in this space, and we see some great examples of that. So I'll close on that be troubled but excited message, and I look forward to talking to you in the panel.
Thank you very much, Simon. And again, as Simon just mentioned, he will be part of the panel in a few minutes. So if you have any questions or would like to ask Simon anything, please write them in now. We'll ensure we get to ask him. If not, we'll get him to respond after the event and get it back to you. So thanks again, Simon. Be troubled, but also be excited. It is an exciting world we're moving in, isn't it? And very rapidly changing and fast moving. We're now going to introduce a case study video, and this is by Mexx Engineering, and it features the director, Louis De Jesus. Now, with over 25 years industry experience in advanced manufacturing, Mr. Louis De Jesus founded Mexx Engineering right here on the Gold Coast. His greatest passion is to innovate and manufacture industry-led automated manufacturing solutions. Mexx Engineering have created a case study video for today to highlight the practical and transitional application of digital supply chain technology within their business. This video will also be released on their YouTube video later on this morning, so you can log on to their Mexx Engineering and see it once again. Mexx have also been involved with RDA Gold Coast on several projects, including the Industry 4.0 and Business and Investment Project. So now I'd like to just run with the video, please.
Mexx Engineering designs and develops innovative robotic systems and advanced manufacturing solutions. Trading since 2006, we are an original equipment manufacturer. For over a decade, the founder and owner, Louis De Jesus, and his team of skilled professionals have manufactured state-of-the-art robotic systems for various manufacturing industries. We are committed to improving the manufacturing processes through the use of advanced manufacturing solutions and automated robotic systems. We are ISO 9001, ISO 45001 and AS 9100 certified. We utilise Industry 4.0 technology in designing advanced manufacturing solutions. We design, develop and install advanced manufacturing robotic systems that can integrate with Industry 4.0 technologies. The advanced manufacturing robotic systems designed and developed by Mexx Engineering can integrate with existing MRP or ERP systems for integrated data exchange. You might be wondering, what is Supply Chain 4.0? Supply Chain 4.0 is the application of the Internet of Things, known as IoT. It is the use of advanced robotics and the application of advanced analytics of big data in supply chain management, which places sensors in everything, creates networks everywhere, automates anything, and analyzes everything to significantly improve performance and customer satisfaction. A digital supply chain is a set of processes that use advanced technologies and better insights into the functions of each stakeholder along the chain to let each participant make better decisions about the sources of materials they need, the demand for their products, and all of the relationship in between. Fully integrating legacy supply chain management technologies is the initial step in digitalizing the supply chain. It entails demand planning, asset management, warehouse management, transportation and logistics management, procurement, and order fulfillment. Truly digitizing a supply chain also involves mining data from those processes and instrumenting the equipment that enables them to produce the required data. So what is the future of digital supply chains? Given the continued uncertain environment, these investments should be kicked into high gear. Building more resilient supply chains is a necessity. Boston Consulting Group says that the digital supply chains can reduce costs by as much as 20%, boost EBITDA, increase revenue by as much as 6%, and increase customer service by as much as 30%. As they evolve, digital supply chains become profit centres, not cost centres, and are the epicenter of totally new business models. The benefits of Industry 4.0 are real. A recent survey by the Business Development Bank of Canada revealed that companies that have adopted Industry 4.0 are experiencing very real operational benefits, such as 60% improved overall equipment effectiveness, almost 50% reduced operating costs, 42% improved overall product quality, and 13% experienced greater capacity to innovate. As we know, traditional supply chains plan and react, whereas digital supply chains predict and prescribe actions to take. Here are some more benefits of having a digital supply chain. Accelerate innovation, reduce time to market, maximize productivity and efficiency, reduce costs, and improve customer satisfaction. If you would like to know more about how you can adapt Industry 4.0 technologies, visit our website on www.mexx.com.au.
Thank you very much. It's so exciting here on the Gold Coast to know that we have such innovative, amazing organisations and companies and businesses. We're moving now to our panel session, and I'm going to introduce Dan Barr. Dan Barr will be our moderator for the panel session on my left-hand side. Thank you, Dan. Dan holds formal qualifications in urban design, public health and project management, and he leads a multidisciplinary consultancy, Better Cities Group. He has 15 years' experience in city building infrastructure, project governance, and has worked with RDA on several projects, including the Regional Biomedical Supply Chain Project and the Industry 4.0 Business and Investment Project, and now currently the Gold Coast Regional Jobs Committee. So welcome, Dan. On my right-hand side, I'd like now to introduce and welcome Louis de Jesus, and he's the Director of Mexx Engineering. But also on our panel, we have Shay back and also Simon. Thank you. And over to Dan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Estella, and thank you, Simon, and thanks, Shay, for our fantastic presentations. We've got quite a few questions coming through, so we'll get right into it. Lewis, I thought I'd start with you. We've got, you're at the coalface in helping businesses move from a traditional supply chain to a digital supply chain. How do you, in reality, find that businesses respond to that and move forward?
Look, it depends on the businesses and where they're actually starting their process. Some business will start from a very manual process and they're just starting on that road, and they may be looking at automation in combination with either MRPs or ERP systems or other electronic based systems to manage how they make their products and how they attend to customers' demands. So it really depends on where they're starting from. Other companies have an existing ERP database system or some other system that they're running their company with, and we can integrate with that completely with automation as well. So we can pull that data directly from their system and then decide, make decisions on how to make it, what needs to be made, what priorities to make, recipe-driven sort of changes. Everything can be driven from one central system, and therefore that ensures your speed to market. It also gives you that versatility that customers are looking for. So yeah, look, I like to always remind companies that pretty well almost anything's possible. We just need to look at it and then address it in look at their particular need and then look at how do we either automate or how do we work within their system to give them the right solution that's going to improve their business.
And that appears to be the critical thing, isn't it, to move forward, to start. When we did the Industry 4.0 project, certainly that was what we found, is that there was an ambition, but then the action to follow is the critical part. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, Simon, and then Shay?
I think the criticality of the journey and the way in which people work through their journey is I'm sorry, I'm picking up a bit of echo. I hope that's just me. It's the criticality of the journey and how people think about that journey is really important. I think having an eye on where you're going to end up, but thinking about how you break that down and move through that. I think for me, it's largely been about the people I've spoken to. It's largely about establishing the right level of confidence. How do you build that confidence? Where do you gain that confidence? Do you gain that confidence from that initial project or from a collaborative support partner? We work a lot with the university sector and helping people get into that space and think about how that gives them either real insight, but I think often it's hand-holding. So I think one of the things for me is thinking about what your network is, where are you going to build, hear your stories, how are you going to build yourself as you move forward.
Shay, I think that your message was about moving forward in bite-sized chunks and doing what you can, but getting started. It doesn't need to be all done in one go. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I think for me it's an interesting difference between, as I said in the talk, about if I'm in a particular sector, be that the sector that's, I'll stick with the injection molding example. If I'm in that world, then I know where I am versus where I want to be, and I can draw that line with decent clarity. You know, I understand that. I've 20 years of doing it, kind of thing. I can see that line. We don't live in a world where that level of clarity down the future turns up. So I think that there's several reasons for doing it in chunks. One is it allows you to build your capability, and it allows you to find your own feet. Make sure you've got the right people around you, the right skill sets, because you're going to find it changes quite a lot. It will change the way you communicate with the marketplace. It might change. I mean, cyber risk is an interesting dynamic that your risk profile may change. Your skill set requirement might change. So it allows you to build that. But it also stops you locking yourself in from something that isn't as ambitious as it could be. Many people I've spoken to will all say, you know, the story is very often the same. We started here, and then we went there, and then that, and then that, and then that, and there's almost a building excitement because we hadn't thought of that. That wasn't in my head. This was in my head, and actually, but once I'd done it, I realised. And data is a perfect example. Once you start seeing data in front of you on your performance, your brain will immediately say, "Oh, what about if we correlated that to some GPS data? Or what about if we compared that to the weather or whatever it might, I don't know, just making stuff up. And then you, then you do that, and then you go, right, what about if we put a third dimension next? Or what about if we visualized it like that? What about if we made that available to our customers? And you don't, it's just a weird thing. I don't think you see that when you start. I think that it uncovers itself. So the progressing in chunks for me is largely about the art of the possible is discoverable rather than definable.
Yeah, that's right. That's perfect, Simon. Shay, do you have any views on that staged rollout?
Yeah, I completely agree with Simon. I think the challenge can be that sometimes we actually get in our own way. Manufacturers are incredibly innovative just by nature. Even before this whole digital transformation has happened, we were always innovating. We were always looking at what are our risks in our business? Where do we need redundancy? Where do we need extra pumps or extra motors? Or how do we set up our maintenance systems to make sure we minimize downtime? It's the exact same mentality that's required for digital transformation. But I think sometimes where we get a bit hung up is on that digital capability. And that's where the diversity of skill sets within your business is so important. Getting more digital natives in to bring that inspiration to us, to bring that insight of how digital systems can be fully integrated. I think that's one of the barriers. We've got the mindset of innovation. We know how to do it, but it's that barrier of not being digital natives for a lot of our manufacturers. So yeah, thinking about your skill set and how you bring in that diversity of age and into your business can be really, really helpful on that journey.
That's perfect. Thanks, Shay. I'd like to talk about the leadership. I'm fascinated by how you lead a company to we're quite scary things. You know, this VUCA mindset, this idea that we're in a dynamic environment. How do leaders in businesses encourage their investors, their shareholders, their employees to come on that journey? And I might start with you, Lewis. You are leading a company doing that.
And I think it comes down to innovation. You got to keep your staff and everyone looking at what's possible. You don't want to limit yourself. I think in this day and age, almost everything is possible. And you look at what's required. Like I'll give an example of if a customer looking to automate, we might say, great, we can automate that. But while you're automating, how would you really want to make this? Are you making it this way because of previous constraints? What would be ideal for your business? Is it the versatility? What would make your business great? What makes your business great? Let's build on that. And when you open up your mind to what's possible within the digital world, and we talk about sensors and gathering data, a lot of times a lot of our systems will have data-based PLCs. Well, we actually will give you lots of data into the PLC or we'll store the data into the database, because even if you don't use it right now, you're gathering all that data. And if you ever do want to gather that, you have a problem or you want to change things, you want to learn something about your product, you can write a script. You can do something very simple to pull that data out. It's just having that data there is critical. So almost store as much data as you can. Examples of with customers where things are fully automatic, we might do a smart vision system making decisions, but we might also just have a passive camera storing images and say, we want to know exactly how that was packed. So that there's a record, so the customer can look back and say, look, we know how we shipped it, we know it's okay. And there's all that can be stored, and it's only retrieved if you need it, or you can then use that to make this decision. So it's a really powerful tool. And back to the points that you raised before, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know because you haven't looked or you haven't thought to look, or when you think about looking, you don't know where to get the information from. So analyzing that data becomes really critical, and I see that as one of the biggest advantages we have going forward, is having that data available to us and then looking into it and then making smart decisions. Again, as leaders, that's how we do that. And then you remind everyone within your business, whether it's from an engineering design level to all levels of the business, to remain creative. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit what you think is possible. Look for the ideal and then work from that.
Yeah, that's good. Simon, any takeaways from the CRC and the 750 organisations in how leaders manage the process?
Yeah, and I think innovation is an interesting way to talk about it, and I'll quote a name from the passing away manufacturing. Dr. Deming used to say that, anybody who remembers him, used to say, you don't have to motivate people, you just have to not demotivate them. And I think there's something true in innovation. I don't think you have to make your business innovative. You have to make sure you're not making it non-innovative. And so I think it's about reflecting on your processes and systems, and are they restrictive? So do you have, as manufacturing and lean people, we like the idea of having a factory rhythm that says, you know, we have the 7 o'clock meeting, then the 9:30 team meeting, the 11 o'clock Tuesday supply chain meeting. Do we have a world that's like that, or do we create opportunities for innovation? And the example I've been poking people with recently is we've all been through a period of the safety share. When they first turned up, you know, the idea, let's have a safety share, and that was obviously done largely to make sure that safety was becoming more front of mind. I've said to industry, why don't you have a innovation share, right? You know, why don't you have one of your meetings when you say, we'll start the meeting with, we'll take it in turns. I want you to come to the meeting with a 10-minute talk on your favorite piece of manufacturing innovation you've heard of. Just get the conversation going, because I just think that when you've got cash flow, you've got quality, you've got safety, you've got resource challenges, you've got people challenges. What can you do? And leadership, I think, is about acknowledging the things that aren't there and creating a system to put them in. And I think that's why safety shares were like they were. And I think the same is true here. Leaders need to find a way to not be the 77% that don't talk about digital strategy. Leaders need to be the ones that look at resources as well. But I think, for me, get the conversation. Make sure the conversation's in the room. It shouldn't be as early a starting point as that. But for many, I think that actually is the reality of it.
Shay, what are your views on leadership in this space?
I would take a little bit of a different tact on it, because I think what we've been seeing through COVID and beyond is that humans are driven by purpose. Ultimately, I think our staff and our workers want to know the why. So I think it's really about, like Jim Pullen says, first who, then what. Think about people first. Think about how we include them in the reasons that we're doing it. What is our purpose for implementing these digital technologies? Are we trying to eliminate some of our carbon footprint? Are we trying to deliver a better service for our customers? What are the reasons behind it, and how do we align our team to that purpose? I think that's just becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, certainly you, Shay, touched on the idea of workforce, and some of the studies that we've talked about with Industry 4.0. There was within industry there was a definite view that there was definitely access to the technology required to transition to a digital supply chain, but accessing workforce to manage those processes in the future was a definite concern. Is that your experience? And I might start with you, Lewis. Is that your experience, and how are we going to manage that going forward?
Well, look, I think it comes down to people also engaging and looking into the future. So, for example, for us, we're looking for engineers. Sure, they come out of university with certain skill sets. They've learned the theory that they need to know, but they also have to take some initial interest into the new technology, because technology is changing all the time. So some initiatives that work is people need to look at what's new. Always keep up to date on newest technology, how you could apply it, different ways of doing things that you might have done before. So I think that's really important. I mean, education's part of it, always is very important, but I think you also have to have a self-interest in learning and looking into things yourself as well to develop to that you are up to speed, because technology is changing so rapidly, and sometimes there's nice technology that's being developed and it's available that you can then implement into different automation systems, which you can make the ideal system. So there's no compromise. You actually go for what exactly the customer needs.
We'll mix it up. Shay, what do you think about how we continue to ensure the workforce that we need is there going forward?
Well, I am typically the forever optimist, but when it comes to pipeline of workforce skills in this area, I'm pretty concerned. I think it is challenging, because the next generation, you can't be what you can't see. And it's, as manufacturers, we just aren't putting forward enough examples to be creating that excitement and that appetite to join into the industry for the next generation. The numbers of students studying the core basics of maths and physics are dwindling. The number of the pipeline into engineering and other technical related fields is also not at the level it needs to be. So I think we need to do a heck of a lot more work to be getting those examples out there, exciting the next generation, and really creating those examples of for our next generation. So these are the jobs of the future. This is why it's cool to be in our industry. This is why you need to study in these fields, and you'll have a fulfilling, agile career. But we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's a real red flag. Simon, do you have views on that?
No, I'd kind of echo Shay's point and maybe connect it to what she said before about purpose. I think we, through things like what we've seen with things like MMI grants and the things that go through there, we are seeing significantly more manufacturers where you can see a real purpose coming through, be that, some of the protein replacements, into the vegan sector, the food manufacturing, that space, and other things where you can see there's a bit of a connection to what might be somebody's purpose and passion. And again, exactly as the others have said, we need to be getting more of those stories out there so people see that as something that they want to be in. Manufacturing isn't just standing in front of a station with a spanner. They need to see the stories that say, actually, it's quite an exciting. I love it, right? You still think it's a fantastic place to be, but the more we can get people hearing the case studies of innovation, but connected, I think, to purpose. I think Shay's right that people go, yeah, I see what difference that's trying to make.
We've got a few more minutes left. I might just try. I've got a question here from one of our participants online. It's how can early adopters in a siloed supply chain engage their partner businesses? And Shay, I might ask you in the first instance, how do you influence your digital friends to get on board?
Yeah, that's a really, really challenging question. I guess framing it with how it will actually benefit them is probably not a bad way to start. It's if businesses aren't looking towards it, you've almost got to create that value proposition about why helping you to help them is actually going to create some benefit. I think there's a lot of education that we need. The reason that question is getting asked is that the awareness is not out there in a lot of our supply chain and in our SMEs. It's getting there, but we've got a lot of work to do on creating the awareness of what the value is to undertaking this journey, at the same time as educating on the risks and how we mitigate them. But it's a really, really tough one. But I think one of the things that we're seeing globally are the trends around decarbonisation and what that's going to mean to our supply chains. So that data and the digital transformation is a really important part of that, because if we can't measure it, we can't manage it, and it's going to be an issue moving forward with regards to tariffs on carbon and other things that we're exporting. So I think it's a pretty big education piece to industry, but working with your supply chain to find how it benefits everybody is probably the only advice I can give.
Okay, thanks, Shay. I was just going to say we've talked about the role of different private organisations in moving forward, but is there a role for government in this? And are there places around the country that are doing it well that we should consider benchmarks? Maybe I might start with you, Simon, on that. Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, look, I'll keep my positive hat on for a moment, and I think there is no doubt that there is really good support out there. So you have people like the Arm Hub, very ambitious in the AI space, a bit further south, and the RDA is very keen on support. And I've seen, and if nobody from anywhere the other states is listening, I'll be honest and say that we see probably more innovative energy across Queensland than we do in many of the other states. To be fair, within the data, when we look state by state, Victoria tends to say that manufacturers compete on cost. You guys tend to say you compete on differentiation. I think that might be an automotive legacy, but it's great. And so, but I think what I think we need to be encouraging government to do is connect the different bits of the ecosystem together well. As an SME in the past, it can get complicated. It can be a complicated network of support. So I think the simpler that get would be nice. But there is no doubt that it's absolutely worth being on top of what the combination of the RDAs and the grant funding systems are doing, because there's some really good success stories come out of that. I'll maybe talk about it later, but the university sector in the same way. So like anything, I think it's finding a collaborator, the organisation that works with you that suits your style.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think look, the government there's a lot of talk. We get involved in what we're doing here, and there's a lot of talking on the Gold Coast and in Queensland regarding innovation. And look, there's grants, and that's great. And I think that does sometimes companies go looking, and whether they get the grant or not, it makes them think about it. And they consider an automation because now there's a grant that they might apply for, they do, and whether they receive it or not, they might go, geez, well, I didn't realize that the actual case for this, for changing the way I do my business, for automating or adding some digital infrastructure into my business actually makes sense with or without the grant. And if they can do that, then they'll go ahead and it would make sense on an economic point of view. So I think the government being involved and talking about this and really being innovative makes people think about it and say, like, let's look forward. Let's not just do the same as we did before. Let's find a better way of moving manufacturing forward. And look, it's a great part. This is a great part of the world, and then we need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, Shay, I'll give you the final word on potential government role in how we continue to push forward.
I think collaborating with all parts of the ecosystem is incredibly important, and government forms a really critical part of that. There's a huge number of examples of where we've seen government educate industry, like Industry 4.0 is a good example. When before in the initial future map data, I think it actually suggested more that in Queensland, our manufacturers didn't actually understand what Industry 4.0 was. But in the latest data that I saw, the majority of businesses actually know what it is. And there was a series of government programs that got out really that awareness side of things. And I think that's a really important part for government to play, is getting that awareness and education out there, but also helping to tell the stories. Like, Lewis, I know Mexx opened your doors during Inside Advanced Manufacturing Week to the state government organised events, and I tried to actually get on one of your tours and they were sold out. So I know that was last year, but government really working with industry to help showcase our businesses and what they're doing is a really, really valuable part of that government collaboration.
And actually, if I could just jump in really quick, I think that's actually really important. I think we talked earlier about getting interest. And I think a lot of people don't realize what automation could be, the type of things that we do and how interesting and how exciting it is. And when they see what's possible, their eyes light up. They go, wow, we can do them. Like, yeah, we can do really almost anything. We just got to look at how we manage whatever needs to happen. And I'm being very vague because really, you give us a problem, we'll find a solution. And it's really that level of approach we need to think of and not think, well, we just can't do that. That's not true. We can do almost anything. And then we just need to ask the question, look forward, and come visit us, come see what we're doing. You'll see automation, you go, wow, we do that right here. And it's exciting, and you realize that it does work, and it looks good, and it works well, and it makes things seem tangible, and it gets people excited. And maybe we need to collaborate more with universities and have regular tours of students, because I think a lot of people don't realize that this, at least our space in automation, even exists to a certain extent. I don't think they realize that that's a job they could aim for in the future, because that will drive passion, and that will make them want to learn more in their maths and sciences and go into these really, really fun, innovative industries, because it's exciting.
Perfect. Yeah, the perfect place to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lewis. The passion. That's good. Oh, thank you very much for joining us on the panel, guys. I think that was really valuable to everyone online, hopefully, and I'll pass over to
Oh,
Estella.
thank you. And again, I'll thank everyone that has presented and has been on the panel. That's fantastic. If you would bear with me now, if you would like to go back to our Slido poll. When we first commenced, I said there was going to be one question. If you looked at the QR, and that was, what is your understanding of the digital supply chain? Would you please now go back to that slide and answer the question in retrospect? What is your understanding now, given the information that you've got today, of your understanding of the digital supply chain between 1 and 5? Thank you. I'll give you a couple of moments. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Look, we will have all that up as a report, and it will be available to you. We now, on the Gold Coast, I've mentioned a couple of times now that we have done a project called the Industry 4.0 Business and Investment Project. If you would like to become, if you are a business who is a user or supplier of Industry 4.0 technology, go to our RDA Gold Coast website, click on Industry 4.0 tab, and you can list your business in that as a supplier or a user. So take advantage of that. We have I think about 86 businesses up there now in big data, in robotics, whatever your field is, go in, put your name, put your company down, and we'll take it from there. Now, to finish up, I'd like now to introduce Joe Cochran. Joe is with the Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Estella. Good morning, everyone. So as Estella mentioned, my name is Joe Cochran. I'm Manager of Economic Development and part of the Queensland Government's Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning. And we're delighted to be here with our partners and collaborate. We've heard that word quite a bit this morning with RDA Gold Coast and also all of our presenters here today. So a little bit about state development. State development has a network of regional offices and they are all throughout Queensland. Supply chain development, business and industry development is a key priority for all of our regions. Our department delivers a range of workshops and programs and industry development initiatives to support businesses along their supply chain journey. You'll see on the screen the Queensland Jobs Fund, and I'd really encourage you to have a look at that site. This keeps you up to date with some of the programs that are available. We've talked about grants in the last session as well, and this will keep you up to date with some of those programs that are available in your business journey. I'd also like to share an example of our own regional office. So as I mentioned, there's regional offices all throughout Queensland. Our office is actually the SEQ South office, and we're located on the Gold Coast. So we regularly hold workshops and webinars for regional businesses to support them with their supply chain journey. Some of those topics are capability statements, procurement, and also tendering for government. Although these options are great avenues for learning, you've learnt today that connection is so important, and it's kind of where the magic happens when you come to these workshops and meet like-minded people and meet people like Lewis here from Mexx Engineering. So I would really encourage you to hop on our website and find out when those upcoming workshops actually are. So what's next following today? It's been a great webinar and I'm sure you have lots of further questions from today. It was great to have the panel, but you may now have thought of other questions post that session. So please give us a call. We are happy to help you navigate the pathway of support that's available. There's a wealth of people around to help you and other agencies as well. For instance, the recently opened Gold Coast Manufacturing Hub, the team here on the Gold Coast to help our local manufacturers as well. We understand that navigating the pathway of support can be very challenging. There is a lot of help out there for businesses, but how do you find it? What's your own pathway? So we would encourage you to talk to our team of officers here in the Gold Coast office or other regional offices, and we can help you navigate that pathway of support and tailor it to suit your own business journey. So what's next following the webinar today? There are two stages that we would recommend, and I think the word connections come through quite a lot today as well. We'd encourage you first of all to look at the Industry 4.0 website. Please register your details or connect with those people that are actually registered already. Or find our office. You'll see our details are on the slide. Please send us an email, send us a phone call, and our team will come and either meet you in your office, we can actually have a phone call, or we can meet you virtually, whatever suits you in these current times. So the two actions are go onto the Industry 4.0 website and engage and connect with your regional network to support you on your supply chain journey. So thanks again for taking the time this morning. We know it's a really busy time on a Friday morning. The presenters have been brilliant, and myself, my team, RDA, and all the partners here look forward to meeting you and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for coming online. We hope you found this webinar informative and interesting. And as Jo said, if you would like to know more, she's got her contact number, and their team based right here in Southport will be able to assist you through that journey. I'd also like to thank all our presenters and also Console, who have hosted today's webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.